Good morning. Today is Thursday, November 12th, 2020. There's a prohibition in the Torah. Later in the book of Vayikra, the Torah says, God commands us, Lo senachashu. We are not allowed to engage in a practice that is referred to as nichush. Nichush means soothsaying or witchcraft or following superstitions in the way that those people who serve idols follow that kind of practice. The Rambam, Maimonides, in describing what this prohibition is, the Rambam writes, Hamesim simanim la'atzmo. If a person creates signs or signals for themselves, for example, Im yira li kach v'kach esed davar ploni. If this thing happens, I will act in the following manner. Or if this thing happens, I will not act in the following manner. If a black cat passes my path, I will not go out. So, according to the Rambam, the prohibition has two parts to it. There is the setting up of some kind of sign or signal if this happens, and then a response in my action or inaction because of that sign or signal. And by the way, this has all kinds of practical applications. A person who reads the horoscope and decides because of what it says on the horoscope that they're going to do a certain thing or not do a certain thing, that would be questionable. Perhaps that's in the category of what the Rambam is talking about. There are other kinds of practices that I think are kind of common, but may actually be included in what the Rambam is saying is under this prohibition. But the Rambam adds three more words, and this is why I've raised it today. So again, the Rambam is describing the details of this prohibition later in the Torah in the book of Vayikra. A person who sets up signs for themselves in order that if such a thing happens, then I will act in such a way. Ke Eliezer Eved Avraham. Like Eliezer, the servant of Avraham. Now, the Rambam identifies Eliezer's actions, which are in our parsha, as being included in this prohibition of nichush. Because in our parsha, Chayesara, the main central narrative of the parsha is that Avraham decides he wants to find a shidduch, a match, a mate, a wife for Yitzchak, for his son Yitzchak. So he sends his trusted servant Eliezer to go back to his family where he originally came from to find a wife who is appropriate for Yitzchak. And the Torah tells us that Eliezer received Avraham's instructions, and Eliezer set out on this journey. And then the Torah says as follows: Eliezer reached the place where Avraham's family lived, and Eliezer said, I guess to himself, he said, V'haya hanara asher amar elea hatina kadech veshta, and it shall be that what I'm going to do, he says to himself, I'm going to approach a young woman and I'm going to say to her, please give me some water, please draw some water for me from the well. And v'amra, and she will say, shesei, I will give you water to drink. V'gam gemalecha eshke, and I will also draw water for your camels. Ata hochachta la'avtecha liyitzchak, that will be a sign that this woman is the woman that you have chosen for Yitzchak. And the Torah continues that there was a second part of the sign. Vatered ha'aina, vatmale kada, vata'al. And Rivka lowered her pitcher into the water of the well to fill it, to give water to Eliezer and his camels. and the water rose to meet her. Our sages explain there were two signs. Eliezer was looking for, number one, if I ask this young woman, a young woman, for water, she'll offer not only me, but she'll also offer my camels. And also, when she draws the water, she will not have to lower the pitcher. The water will miraculously rise to her. So Eliezer says to God or to himself, that these are the two signs. And if these two signs occur, that will be the signal that this is the right woman. Says the Rambam, that is nichush. That's like the black cat walking in front of you. You decide you're not going out today. Ke Eliezer Eved Avraham. Eliezer's actions are in this category of nichush. Now, before I go any further, I want to tell you a story. It's an amazing story, and this is a true story that I heard from Rabbi Yisrael Reisman. And the story goes like this. There was a man, a religious man, and Nebuch, his wife, died early, so he was a widower, and he was left with young children. Some time passed, and someone suggested to him, to this man, this widower, suggested to him a date, a shidduch, a match. And a number of years had passed since his wife had passed away, and he decided, okay, I'm going to go out on a date. So at that time, by that time, his son, who was living at home, was also of dating age, and his son was in the process of dating, looking for a shidduch, looking for a match. So the son asks his father, he says, Dad, how exactly are you going to start dating again? I mean, you haven't dated anyone since, whatever it is, 30 years. How are you going to start dating again? How are you going to know if you find the woman who is right for you? I mean, it's not like, the son says to his father, it's not like you're going to feel some kind of romantic spark. I mean, you're too old for that. How are you going to find and know that this is the right person? Just parenthetically, it's kind of interesting what adult children think about their parents. That's another subject. Okay. So the father said, so here's what the father said. The father said, it's a good question. I don't know. But Eliezer, in our parsha, asked for a sign. As I mentioned, really there were two signs, that she should offer water not only to him, but also offer water to the camels. And also, when she draws the water will rise to her. Eliezer asked for these two signs. So I figured I'll do the same thing. I'm going to daven to Hashem. I'm going to pray to God to give me a sign. Somehow I should have a sign that this is the right person. Okay. That night, he made the call to this woman who had been suggested to him. They had arranged a time for him to call, and he called. It was like an initial get-to-know-you phone call to see if there's anything there to go forward. Now, this woman was a widow. Her husband had passed away. She had several young children. And so he called, and they started to talk. And it seemed like they were really connecting, that it was a pleasant conversation. And it seemed like they were getting along. It seemed like this is something to explore. And all of a sudden, the woman says, I have to leave. I have to hang up. So the man says, hold on just 1 second. What's wrong? Did I say something to upset you? Is something wrong? And she says, no, I have to go. One of my children just came out of the bathroom and the toilet has stopped up and the water is coming up all around me and I have to hang up the phone and I have to go take care of it. So the man understood that the water was coming up to greet her. And he understood that this was a sign from God that this was the right woman. and soon after that, they were married. And that is a true story. Okay, that's a great story, but the question remains, what about the Rambam? It would appear from the Torah, from our Parsha, that Eliezer, Avraham's servant, is a righteous person, is acting correctly. He finds the woman who clearly is Hashem meant for Yitzchak to find, Rivka, who becomes Rebecca, who becomes our matriarch. So how could the Torah present this as if this is okay, and then the Rambam, Maimonides, to say it's an example of a prohibition in the Torah? So that is a very serious question. And with your permission, I would like to provide an answer to that question tomorrow morning. You can think about it overnight. If you have an answer, I'd love to hear it. But with God's help, tomorrow morning, I'll give you the second half of this story to try to answer this question. My friends, I want to wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon in person.